possibly encouraging violence towards women.
Well, to get more on this, we're joined from Central London by Anna van Heeswijk, Campaigns Coordinator for Object. That's an organisation that challenges the sexual objectification of women and girls in the media. Also with us here in the studio, Piers Herney, a journalist and former editor of FHM and Front magazines. Anna van Heeswijk, to you first. What's your reaction to this report?
Well, we completely welcome this report, which clearly outlines the harms associated with the sexual objectification of women and girls in the media and popular culture, and which holds different public bodies to account and calls for different policymakers to take action on this issue to challenge the pornification of society.
It does do that, but doesn't it also look to parents to take more responsibility for what their children are actually able to access in the first place?
From our point of view, it's completely unfair to rest all the responsibility on the shoulders of parents. We are constantly being bombarded with these messages, with these sexist images that stem from pornography. And although, of course, it's important to empower parents and to empower children and young people to be able to stand up to these messages and reject these messages, ultimately responsibility lies with the government and other public decision-making bodies to fulfil their international and domestic obligations to tackle the sexual objectification of women in the media and popular culture.
Piers Herney, maybe I can bring you in on that point as well. How much responsibility do you feel that lads mags and the media bear in this particular issue?
Well, I think what we're talking about here is the media as a whole, and I'm talking advertising, the internet, men's and women's newspapers, magazines and newspapers. If there's a common consensus that the sexualisation of young women and young boys, for that matter, then fine. If that's agreed, then you need to look at all of those and make changes to all of them. And that's not for me to decide. What I am here to say is that to point the finger at lads mags and use them as a sort of whipping boy, blame them for society's ills, is like blaming me and my hairdryer for global warming. It just doesn't compute.
But they are part of a culture, are they not, that's grown up over the last couple of decades in which young people, men and women, boys and girls, are bombarded with images that perhaps they weren't exposed to 20 or 30 years ago. That's
true, but that's life. And we have to get on. You know, perhaps that's a natural evolution of mankind, or perhaps it's a terrible evil and we have to reverse it. But you know, I don't think lads mags are the cause of this. They reflect society more than dictate it. And you know, I think it's much more relevant to be concentrating on the internet than putting men's magazines up a couple of shelves or covering them in plastic, which would effectively completely make the whole group of lads mags completely unviable commercially. It would be the end of lads mags, and I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah. Anna van Heeswijk, what would you like to see change in practice here?
Well, we'd like to see recognition of the need for socially responsible media, and that means independent and robust regulation of the media, which takes equality principles as its baseline. We'd like to see statutory codes for the sale and display of lads mags, so that if they're sold at all, they're covered up, they're placed on the top shelf, and age restrictions are applied.
Well, you're ending the industry, according to Piers Herney.
Well, I don't think she cares about that. In fact, she would celebrate that.
I certainly don't, because lads mags have played a key role in mainstreaming pornography.
What about women's mags, like More magazine and things like that? Do you have a word of complaint about them?
The whole tone that runs through lads mags is one of complete contempt for women. They make fun of and trivialise. They make fun of and trivialise issues such as rape, violence, prostitution and trafficking. And the images clearly just come out of pornography. They're what we would have seen on the front cover of hardcore pornography about 20 years ago, but now that's been that's considered more and more normal. And that clearly plays a huge role in terms of sending out messages about how it is acceptable to view and treat women in this society.
Well, it's clearly not true that the lads mags of today are the hardcore pornography of 20 or 30 years ago. I should know, because I looked at it, I was a young man in those days. and that was a totally different...
We've actually conducted research, and we've compared lads mags to some pornographic magazines, and we've actually seen that often lads mags are more contemptuous of women and are actually more sexually explicit and more pornographic. And they have adverts in the backs of the magazines which have for hardcore pornography and for escort services.
Can I just broaden it finally to you, Anne van Heeswijk? The problem surely that you face, whether it's lad mags, whether it's the internet, whether it's music videos, these things are there, they are out there, and people know how to get hold of them. And the idea that you can put the genie back in the bottle is simply fanciful, isn't it?
But it's up to society to draw a line in the sand and say that we don't think that it's acceptable for women and girls to be portrayed as a sum of body parts who are always sexually available, and that has an impact on how girls and women are viewed and treated in this society. And considering the fact that we live in a society in which 2 women are murdered each week by male partners, in which women earn 23% less than men on average in the workplace, in which 80% of MPs are male, sexual harassment in schools is a huge issue. We have to look at the attitudes that underpin this discrimination, underpin violence against women. And this is recognised by international human rights bodies. It's recognised by the End Violence Against Women Coalition, which is the largest coalition of women's organisations. This is not new information.
Piers Honeywill, let me give you a chance to respond to that, and also I'll put this question to you as well. Do you accept the findings of the report that there are some problems now with children being given access, allowed access to overly sexualised images too young? And if you do, what do you think the solution is? More generically, not just from the lads' mags perspective. I
wholeheartedly accept that. I don't wholeheartedly accept, you know, the accusations against lads mags in any way. And I think it's disappointing she only talked about women. Okay. You know, this is about young men as well. It's about children being sexualised. But you can see she's got her particular axe to grind.
OK, if it's about children generically, what is the solution?
I would say it starts with parents protecting children from the adult world until they're adults. And that's a solution, and you can do it with the help of government, but primarily it lies at the feet of the parents.
OK, I suspect we could have talked for longer, but we'll have to end it there. Thank you both very much. Thanks to Piers Honeywill here, and thanks to Anne van Heeswijk there in central London as well.
Now, scientists have warned that a vast iceberg, which is nearly 50 miles long and has broken free from the Antarctic, could threaten marine life.
Yes, Australian researchers are fearing it could block an area that produces much of the world's dense and very cold seawater, disrupting the ocean's currents. Tom Simons now reports.
The Mertz Glacier, described by one scientist as a loose tooth waiting to break free from Antarctica. 1,300 feet thick, 48 miles long. It didn't melt due to global warming. Instead, it was knocked loose by a giant floating iceberg. The Mertz Glacier used to stick out into the sea around 1,500 miles south of Tasmania. Over the years, satellite pictures have shown the giant